If any of you have been to medieval times, the actual medieval era was quite literally the opposite. There was some jousting, but for the most part, life in this era was difficult, and it seemed that time literally stopped moving in Europe for hundreds of years, as all cultural, technological, and educational advances just stopped. So if you think the medieval era was a time of knights, jousting, lords, kings, princesses, dragons, fairies, heroic chivalry, blah 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 blah, it wasn't. Hi, welcome back to Whitney High School Study Guide, and today we're going to take a brief look at the medieval era. So the medieval ages was also known as the Dark Ages, and well, for good reason. The light of Western civilization that manifested itself in the Roman Empire was put out in 476 AD when the Visigoths finally sacked the city for good, ending centuries of European prosperity. The Roman Empire dissolved into multitudes of kingdoms and principalities of power, which all squabbled amongst themselves. This was truly a dark time as the land saw constant warfare. Roman establishments were torn down to build houses and villages. Literacy declined almost altogether. Life expectancy dropped. Europe became literally the worst place to ever live in. But a new system called feudalism emerged. Feudalism developed and prevented mass starvation throughout Europe. Feudalism and the idea of mannorism was the following. Basically, a lord would have a land or a manor. People in this land became part of the lord's land, and they were entitled to work for the lord, and in exchange, the lord would provide his protection. This system of self-sufficiency and debt made Europe an uneventful and isolated place. However, among all of this turmoil, one institution still existed in Western Europe, the Christian Church. The Christian Church became the single most unifying force in Europe, as soon all of Europe would become subjects to it. This is why Europe was originally known as Christendom. Of course, there would eventually be a schism, a great big schism to be exact, as there were some falling outs. It was kind of like the hey, let's stay friends breakup between the Roman Catholic Church in Rome and the Eastern Orthodox Church in the Byzantine Empire. Of course, in reality, it wasn't fine and dandy at all, actually. Both excommunicated each other, basically sending each other to hell. To this day, there are still tensions between the two churches, although the new leaders are attempting reconciliation. While the Catholic Church slowly expanded its influence all throughout Europe, they were suddenly faced with a massive problem on their hands: the Islamic Caliphates. The Islamic Caliphates had expanded from the origins in the Middle East and spread throughout northern Africa and actually also occupied Spain. If the Islamic armies kept their relentless expansion up, Christianity would soon be wiped out completely. It was 732 AD, and the Frankish king Charles Martel, or Charles the Hammer, led his extremely well-trained army against the forces of the Muslims who were invading France in the Battle of Tours. This battle was pivotal for the history of Europe as it determined whether it would stay Christian or not. In a surprise maneuver, Charles managed to send a squad of cavalry to the enemy camp, where they carried off much of the treasure from the Muslim force before ultimately defeating them and pushing them out of France for good. The Catholic Church saw the success of Charles Martel and realized that in order for Europe to be great again, they needed another Roman Empire, only this one would be run by the Church alongside the monarch. Around the year 900, Europe was mostly united by Charles the Great, or Charlemagne, and was crowned emperor by the Western Church and renamed the Holy Roman Empire by the Pope himself on Christmas. This never became really a major power, however. After Charlemagne died, his empire was split in three among his three sons. One of them got France, the other got Germany, and the last one got a huge swath of land in the middle known as Alsace-Lorraine, a territory that would be disputed even into World War I among the two countries. Now I need to clarify one thing. There's some morbid reason to why life was terrible. In the year 1000, there's a crisis among Christians as they believe Jesus was coming back, although he never did. They believe that 1,000 years after Jesus' birth, he will come back and the world would end, hence why no one really bothered continuing with civilization. When the year 1000 came, though, people started building up civilization again, since it was obvious Jesus wouldn't come to kill the world. Technological advances arose, and horse riding techniques were created, along with it the cult of chivalry and the creation of knighthood. The Catholic Church wanted to civilize the barbarian tribes within Europe and decided to reassert their power. They figured that what better way to do this by starting a war. After all, war is the biggest unifying factor. Am I right? The church then decided to launch an invasion of the Middle East, or the Holy Land, and motivate the Westerners by saying if they died, they would go to heaven, and this would become the Crusades. At first, they were successful, and they actually took the Holy Land, or Palestine area, and also set up feudal kingdoms to reassert their influence. Turns out I was right. The wars unified Muslims against the Christians. See? War is a unifying factor. The Muslims ended up taking back the Holy Land, leading to a lot more crusades in the future, but we won't get into that. It's important to note that the Crusades weren't very Christian-like despite their intentions. It's important to realize that they were just as much the bad guys as they made the Muslims seem. They raped, pillaged, and killed innocent civilians. In the Fourth Crusades, they actually just forgot to go to the Holy Land, instead sacked Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, which was their Christian ally. Why? Okay, forget it, God or something. That was their justification. It is also important to realize, and I'll mention this later, but no war is really fought for religion or any abstract concepts. People fight wars for selfish reasons, such as access to resources, land, and trade, such as the Crusades. However, they obviously got the land part. They got resources, which I'll mention really quickly later. Also trade. Controlling the Holy Land was vital, as now trade routes to Asia were now opened up. Now, back to the resources. There are several niceties from the Crusades brought back, including desserts, rhyming poems, hot baths, spices, the god-awful algebra, dental care, and zero. The number zero, that is. Arguably, that was one of the most beneficial things we received from the Crusades. It was this inflow of luxury goods that was the catalyst for the destruction of feudalism. Feudalism was based on the very idea of self-sufficiency. So when new items come in and interest people, the idea of self-sustentation falls apart and arises trading and the formation of towns. But of course, the Crusades had a massive impact on the church. The Crusades gave the church so much power from the accumulated wealth and the fact that they were the ones that led the military expedition. However, this also created dislike among Westerners for the church. This would begin a slow set of reactions that would eventually lead to the collapse of the prestige of the Catholic Church altogether. In simple terms, the church was too big to fail, but that meant they only had room to start. Another reason the church lost power was the Black Plague. Now, the Black Plague's origin is shady, but is believed to have originated in the Black Sea region. Some pathogen made its way to the Middle East, where it infected some of the population. It took a toll on the Mongolian army sieging the city of Kaffa. The Mongolians actually used this and catapulted infected bodies into the city, leading to the entire population being infected and eventually dying. In fact, this is probably the first recorded attempt at biological warfare, but that's besides the point. However, a select few sailors made their way out and reached Europe, and bada bing, bada boom, Black Death. Sanitation and germ theory was a long way off, and people didn't know why they were being punished by God. However, people saw that the monks, the nuns, bishops were dying just as fast, and people thought that these were the people that are supposed to be holy, and yet they weren't being protected. This raised a lot of eyebrows in the medieval community, that is, if they weren't dead yet. The third wedge for the Christian church was the Great Western Schism. Many monarchs were angry since the church taxed so much and held so much political power in Europe. Nations like France were vocal about who should be in charge. The Pope, as if addressing children, issued the papal bull, which reminded everyone that the Pope was obviously the most powerful, and those who disagreed would be excommunicated. Just a side note. King Philip IV of France respected the Pope as a devout Catholic, but didn't want the church to be powerful, so he called for a new papal election, resulting in a French Pope. Also, the papal capital was moved from Rome to Avignon. At the same time, Italians elected their own Pope in Rome as they were jealous of the French, and this divided Europe as many countries chose between the two churches. This made the church look really silly, as they couldn't even figure out who was in charge and whatnot. Eventually, high-ranking church officials met and moved to remove all current popes and elect a new one. The bishops also wanted the veto power against the Pope in case the popes go rogue again, and this of course never happened, as the Pope's word is law, and to this day the bishops are still denied this power. Things started settling down again until another disaster struck. In 1453, Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks. The church realized without a major Christian city in the east, economic power will shift to the east, making Christendom reliant on a new Muslim nation to keep its economy on its feet. It was that will lead to Christopher Columbus's exploration for a new route of trade. To wrap some things up, the church was really weak, and this would lead eventually to the Protestant Reformation. Trade shifted, leading to mercantilism, which would be adopted in colonies. Constantinople fell, and explorers needed to find cheaper trade routes, and this would lead to the Age of Exploration. During all this, the Renaissance was happening, which you will find out about next time. Thanks for watching this episode of Whitney High School Study Guide. The next video will start focusing on things that we're actually going to get tested on, so keep an eye on that. Today we learn about the Dark Ages, the rise of the Holy Roman Empire, the rise of the Church, both schisms, the Crusades, and the transition to the Renaissance. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.